What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, you know, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated. Yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk. What a great episode of ScaleUp Radio this one is. Again, I've had a fantastic discussion with Kate Bell, who's the founder of Zip Us In, and it's a brilliant product. It's a really great journey that Kate has been on, from literally being off on maternity leave and coming up with an idea and then taking it through over 8 years to being in multiple countries, having sold tens of thousands of units of the main product. And it's great. And we can hear about her journey where she was approached by Boots, got the company into Boots early on, how she went around finding a manufacturer for her products because she was literally making it herself, sewing it together with a mother, going through all of that, raising some angel finance at one point, then getting some additional finance, including a venture capital investment, all sorts of wonderful things, and one or two great examples of things that just practical examples of things that she wished she'd known at the time and would have done differently. And along the way, a trip to Dragon's Den as well. So what's not to like about this action-packed episode? There's so much to learn and such a great story from Kate. It's a delight to have her on, and I know that you're going to love this episode. Welcome to another episode of ScaleUp Radio. I'm here with Kate Bell, who is the founder of Zip Us In. So, Kate, welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Great to have you on. So, Zip Us In, tell us what's that all about? There's a clue in the name.
There really is, yes. Although it's had some odd pronunciations, but Zip Us In started life when I was pregnant with my second daughter and couldn't find a maternity coat. So I designed a very simple panel that would zip into my own jacket, that would effectively turn any coat that I had into a maternity coat. I didn't want to waste the money on a maternity coat, and I didn't want the environmental wastage either. It seemed a pointless exercise to buy a maternity coat for such a short period of time. So one of those really simple ideas that you think, well, why isn't that out there? Yeah. Designed one myself, and it organically grew into a business. At the time I wasn't expecting that, but that's the starting point.
No, it's fantastic, and I know you've had a lot of stepping stones along the way. Can you give us a feeling as to the stage that the business is at now?
So we are in our 8th year now. It's been one hell of a journey so far. And we are at a really interesting pivotal point for the business at the moment. The jacket expander panel, which was our sort of initial product, has done incredibly well. We've sold about 35,000 of those. Wow. All across the world now. So the growth has been amazing. And then we've hit this point where actually we've got this loyal customer base that we're talking to all the time. And the concept of a piece of fabric that adapts a current piece of clothing has really become something else. So talking to the customers, they've said, oh, can you make this and expand this piece of clothing? Or I've got this and I wish I could carry on wearing that through my pregnancy. And actually the whole concept of being able to utilize clothing that you already have, rather than going out and spending money on maternity clothing, which ultimately maternity clothing is fast fashion because it's a temporary fix for your wardrobe. So why can't we find other ways of adapting clothing, or clothing that could be worn throughout pregnancy and then worn afterwards? And so right now we are just about to launch an entire range of clothing solutions that you could adapt to wear throughout pregnancy and then adapt back afterwards so that you can carry on wearing them long afterwards. So this really is, Zippers In started with this one core product that appealed to so many people to be able to carry on wearing something they already loved, and has now organically grown into something that's just about to explode into the industry, and hopefully will wipe out maternity wear and really work towards reducing the impact that it has, because we wear it for 6 months, 9 months, whatever. And then we, hopefully we pass it to a friend. Hopefully it gets more use, but eventually it ends up in landfill with all the rest of the tons of fabric. So if we can offer customers that something that they can wear throughout pregnancy, but then doesn't become redundant, that can carry on and be worn long afterwards, then maybe we'll actually work towards that tiny little step of having an impact on the amount of fabric that ends in landfill. So yeah, we're really exciting times just at the moment.
Sounds incredible. And have you seen much in the way of people picking up on your idea and trying to copy it? Are there other competitors out there? The original idea?
Few. So, as a business, we own a fairly substantial IP portfolio. So, when I realised that this was sort of a bit of a game-changing product, we put in a patent application. So, we have a suite of patents, trademarks, design protection. So, I was very particular about making sure that the brand was well covered. And then, in launching new products, all of the new products we've designed, which are equally as unique, we've made sure that they're protected with design protection and the relevant trademarks. So there hasn't been a huge amount of competition because we are quite unique. I would also say that because we're a first mover, we have that advantage of people really relating this item that expands a jacket and turns it into a maternity coat or turns it into a baby wearing coat. That is synonymous with our brand. That is Zip Us In. That is the product. That is the brand. So we're really well known for being the first company that developed that product. There are a few companies that are doing something similar, and I would say that actually is quite a positive thing. I mean, then there's not many business owners, or not many people would expect me to say that. But in fact, when we launched the product, nobody was online searching for jacket expander panel. Everyone was Googling maternity coat or baby wearing coat or search engines just weren't identifying jacket expander as a search term. Whereas now, in fact, that search term is often the third highest search for item on Google for maternity category. Yeah. So we have created something that wasn't there before. And when there are competitors in the marketplace, it brings awareness to that type of product. Yeah. So more people are looking for it. And in fact, if we continue to be the leading providers of that product, the original product, the one that has the IP, the one that is well known, well tested, and has great customer loyalty and great reviews, then that competition is always healthy, because it makes sure that we're continuing to provide the best product for the customer base. And also, just raises the awareness that product is out there, and it's not necessary to go and buy a maternity coat anymore.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And how big's your team? What sort of size team have you got now working with you?
We're a fairly small team. Yeah. Myself and my oldest daughter, we do the majority of the work. My daughter runs the social media, does a lot of the admin. We've also got Charlotte, who is my absolute third arm. She's absolutely amazing, does all the admin and customer services. We have a warehouse and some warehouse staff, but the majority of the rest of the team are self-employed individuals who subcontract and have done with us from the beginning. So they are really part of our team, but a fairly external team. We're in the process at the moment of fundraising to grow that team and to be able to launch the new product range. So it really is sort of game-changing times for us at the moment. Tomorrow we're actually due to launch a crowdfunding campaign, which is a really exciting step for the brand, which hopefully will enable a lot of the customer base to really get behind the brand and see us do great things moving forward. And a big part of that is to expand that team and help us support that rapid growth process.
Yes, I can imagine crowdfunding working really quite well for you. Actually, certainly hope it does. It's certainly something that you can imagine all sorts of members of the public getting behind and wanted to help you with. So yeah, very good. So what you've done is the kind of thing that most entrepreneurs would dream of. I think you've identified a gap in the market where there's nobody else playing. There's a need there. You've invented something and you've filled that need, and you've now grown to being, as you say, 35,000 sales of that main core product. You're in how many countries now are you exporting to?
Last count about 38.
38. So fantastic achievement for somebody kind of starting out on this journey. How do they get to where you are? If you've got this idea, how do they actually do something with it? Take us back to when, right back at the beginning.
Oh wow!
14, was it when you?
Right back in. Okay, so I'm stood there with my jacket that I can't do up anymore, thinking there's got to be something out there that fixes this problem, because of course everything's already been invented, so there must be something. And when there wasn't, I was thinking, right, okay, what do I need? What are the things that product needs to do? And it needs to be waterproof. The fabric needs to be non-toxic next to my baby if I'm using it for baby wearing after the baby arrives. So you start kind of writing all these requirements down. You start drawing out all these little sketches. And then, of course, I went to my amazing mum, who is a whiz on the sewing machine. I'd found some fabric and I was like, right, Mum, this is what I kind of need to do. So we cut out a template from a piece of newspaper and we worked out roughly how it needed to be. And of course, the first one we produced didn't work the way it needed to. So, 4 or 5 attempts later, I had something that fit in my jacket.
And this was literally
that solved the problem.
On your sewing machine, was it? Literally making it yourself?
This was my mum's sewing machine, putting one together, which at the time was just to fix that problem for myself.
Yep.
I needed something to expand my jacket. I couldn't find something, so I'm going to make it. And it was really when I then started using it and people would ask where I got it from, or my friends and family would see pictures that I'd posted and people wanted one for themselves, that it became very apparent that, right, okay, well, if I've solved a problem for myself, I'm certainly not the only person that can't fit in a jacket during pregnancy or wants to be able to do my jacket up around my baby when she's in a baby carrier. So there's clearly a gap here. And that's when I then started to think, right, okay, well, I'm going to need a website. I'm going to need social media. I'm going to need marketing and a brand and all those things that start to fall into place. But it was actually about 6 months into that process when I was between my mum and a lovely lady with her sewing machine in the garage who was also helping me out. We were putting together made to order. So customers would message me on Facebook and say, I'd like one, please. We'd make it and we'd send it out to them. And it was a very, at the kitchen table family organisation at that point. And at that 6 month point, I had a contact from Boots to say they'd seen this on Facebook and would I come and talk to them and their buying team. Wow. They were running a mompreneur promotion where they wanted to know about mums that had invented products themselves to solve a problem for themselves as parents. So I went up to Boots head office, sat in front of the buying team and told them all about my jacket and why I came up with this idea, and was sort of expecting them to say, oh, that's wonderful, come back in a couple of years when you've actually formulated a proper business out of this. And they said to me, oh, could you just wait outside for a minute, which I did. And when I came back in, they sort of looked at me with this very serious face and said, how quickly do you think you'd be able to put those on our shelves? And my dad taught me you always say yes and you work out the details later. So I'm like, of course, yeah, no problem. This was September. I was like, yeah, we could have them in store for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
Little did I know what would be the journey in front of me. So at that point, I had a full year's work then to look at a larger scale manufacturer. Obviously, my lady with her sewing machine in the garage and my mum with her sewing machine were not going to be able to produce the kind of quantities that Boots needed. There was then product insurance, public liabilities, product testing, really taking it back to the bare bones and looking at what's actually going to be required to take this onto a much larger scale and to supply these products internationally. And yeah, a year later, I had the incredible moment of walking into a Boots store and seeing my product hanging on the shelf. And that really was quite something, because it was a huge amount of work to get to that stage. And at that point, we were supplying 91 Boots stores around the UK. So it was a huge leap in a very short space of time. A year sounds like a long time and it was a lot of work, but to take it from making to order from the kitchen table to a brand that was then supplying a well-known high street store within a 12-month period was actually a huge leap.
Did they offer you any help in going through that process, or was that all down to you?
Particularly. I think probably the place I turned where I got the most support were other brand owners. Okay. And that would be something I'd say to anybody else that's starting out on that journey, would be to talk to other small business owners, reaching out to other baby brands who had been created by parents. That community is incredible, and business owners will always support other startups because we were all there once. Yep. And it's wonderful to see an idea come to fruition and actually make it onto shop floors. It's an incredibly challenging process. It's a huge amount of work, but it's very, very rewarding. And so to have other business owners saying to me about, here's the greatest tip that I got given, or here's something that you really need to avoid, the mistakes. I'll give you a great example. I produced this product. I designed the packaging. We ordered 1,000, which was my very first order from the larger factory. And they turned up, and I thought it was the best day ever. And I sent them into Boots, and Boots said, you're missing the address of the packaging. So back comes 1,000 products, because it's a legal requirement to have the company's address on the box. I was completely unaware of this. It wasn't something that I'd found out. It wasn't something I'd been told. Something maybe I should have researched in far more detail in hindsight. But yeah, so I spent the next couple of days putting stickers on 1,000 boxes before I had to then send them back out to 91 Boots stores. That was an expensive and timely mistake that is one of those things that when it seems really obvious, but there are so many of those little things that you don't know until you do the research and do the background work. And so now that's I work with a lot of startups now that are in that process, and one of the first things I say, right, let's look at the packaging, because there are so many things on there that you could fall down on, and those little mistakes can be avoided so easily. But yeah, there's a massive amount of mistakes as I look back, of all the things that I would have done differently maybe. But actually, as you think about the whole journey, all the mistakes that were made, they're all a really important part of the process. And I think you can't start out on this journey unless you're prepared to fail a lot. And then you're prepared to pick yourself back up again, learn everything you can, pull that mistake to pieces and work out what you would have done differently, learn from it. And then the business becomes stronger, the foundations become more solid. And moving forward, all those little things led to having a product that people really, really love, and having packaging that clearly explains what the product is, and a brand that people really relate to. And so that whole learning process is just so important. And I'm glad that every single one of those mistakes happened. Yeah. And if I could go back and do it again, I wouldn't do anything differently, because it's a really, really important part of the journey for the business to grow, but also for me as a founder to be able to have that experience. Okay, brilliant. So, and a really good example. I can imagine you sitting there with your stickers on 1,000 products. Yeah, fantastic. So just take me back to Boots though. So Boots said, yeah, we want this. Did they set the price for you at that point? And then how did you go and find somebody to make them and know whether or not you were getting a good deal, what gross margin you needed to be trying to achieve? How did you go about all of that sort of thinking? Research, I think. A store like Boots, high street stores are very used to dealing with distributors or large brands. So for them, this was new to be dealing with a mum. I had some business experience. I was running a marketing agency at the time. So I had some background of business experience and some marketing experience, but I knew nothing about retail and manufacturing. This was all new. And there really wasn't a lot of guidance, because I think they didn't realise quite how inexperienced I was. And to them, they were buying a product. I developed this product. It was up to me to get that product ready for market. So I then had to work out how I was going to set the price, which came down to customer conversations. So having focus groups and sitting down with people who were going to be my potential customers, and just asking, if you had this product, what would you be prepared to pay for it? And just talking to as many people as possible to find out those things, and then talking to other brands and looking at their recommendations on manufacturers, meeting with manufacturers, because I think a lot of it is gut instinct. You look at a factory, you know what you're looking for, you know what's going to sit well with the brand, and communicating with people that you feel comfortable doing business with. So there were lots of meetings, lots of research, lots of traveling around to find exactly what I was looking for. And I think probably even then there was still a huge learning curve to go through, because when I had my manufacture costs, I was thinking, right, this is great. It can be a relatively inexpensive product that I can offer to consumers for a sensible price. But then there's all the other things that were yet to learn about. So the shipping and the packaging and the insurance and the overheads for the business, there was still an awful lot more to take into account. It doesn't just come down to, right, well, this is the manufacturing cost, this is what I want to make on the product, and therefore this is what I'm going to sell it for. Something we often don't think about is the majority of retailers will look for about 60% discount. So they take a huge margin. So all of those things, those calculations, were sort of a little bit further down the line. And I'm having to think, gosh, okay, it's not really quite as straightforward as I was thinking, and having to adapt and move and learn all the way along until I got to the point where it actually worked. So, we were a good 3 years into the business before I thought, right, this is the right product, the packaging's right, the brand's right. And there's always still adaptation to have. There's always still more lessons to learn and new information to take on board. But it is a process. Absolutely, there's always got to be that iteration, hasn't there? And as you learn things, but getting that business model right as early as you can, so that you know that this is now scalable. We can scale to 10 times the size or whatever else. Not only can we have it made, but actually there's the money's in there, the margin's in there, and it all works. It takes a little time to prove, doesn't it? And as you say, you have to hone it along the way. That's probably a large reason why it's taken to this point before we've said, right, okay, now we're ready to really hit that high growth stage, and why we're now focusing on crowdfunding to launch a range of products is because we know we've had that solid period of time to test the products, to test the market, to really prove the concept that adaptive clothing meets a need and can really make a difference in the industry we're approaching. Yeah, and I'd like to explore that in a little bit. Did you fund it from cash flow from the very beginning, or did you? How did you get the business off the ground from the money perspective? Initially it was my own money, my family savings going into it. There was a insane amount of bootstrapping for the first few years. Mm-hmm. And it was really just recycling the cash flow into the business constantly. I was very lucky in that I didn't need it to provide my income because I was still working as well. So for a lot of the time, I had a full-time job and I was still trying to build this business as well as a full-time job and parenting. Right. There was still the new baby there.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And my older daughter. So it was, it was a lot to put that time and effort into building something that wasn't actually going to fund my life for quite some time was a real commitment. And it really was just putting all the spare cash we had into building it. And eventually the company was producing revenue, which would go back in. So year on year, we would sell all the product we could afford to manufacture. And that money would then enable us to produce twice the amount of stock for the following year. So it was constantly doubling our revenue year on year and doubling the manufacturing year on year. And that's how it worked for quite some time. A little bit further down the line, when we launched into the US, we took on some inventory financing, we looked at our debt options, and we also took on some investment about 3 years ago, which really helped us then to launch the brand into the US and Canada. And that made a huge difference to the product reach. And then you get to the point where, what's the next bit? And then it's looking at that cash flow all over again.
Absolutely. So that's obviously a key milestone. Then you were starting to think about going internationally. Must have done the assessment, thinking actually we need a bit of extra money to be able to support it. So can you take us back through some of the thinking then and how you went about that? How did you decide? You mentioned different types of financing there, but how did you decide that? How did you decide how much you needed? And presumably when you took on some investment, there must have been the discussions about, okay, well, are we going to have to give away any equity as part of that? And if so, how much? I know there's lots of questions in there, but if you could be thinking, that would be great.
So looking at sort of the process of knowing that there was a market for us, we were selling on Amazon, as well as some of the high street stores, as well as some independent stores and via our own website. And it was quite apparent that we were receiving orders to our own website from a lot of international countries. So initially it was from Europe. So we had a really strong customer following in Germany very quickly. And the minute one product goes into a country, mums say, oh, this is amazing, look what I've bought. And of course they share great products. So we would send one to France, and then the following week there'd be 3 or 4 to France, and the following week there'd be 10 to 20 to France. So it really did grow quite organically initially. We then looked at the Amazon platforms we were using. I thought, right, well, if we are sending product from our own website into Germany and into France, there's obviously an interested market there. Let's have a look at what we can do on Amazon. And we launched into those marketplaces via Amazon, which gave us a fairly easy way to export products to those countries initially to test those markets. And they flew really quickly. So we were learning from the Amazon sales where our products sat best. Okay. So obviously, for example, Germany, the market out there are very well suited to our products. They're very outdoorsy. They like to use baby carriers and slings over pushchairs. That was great. In Italy, not so much. That's less of our marketplace. So there was a lot of learning all the way along, and Amazon gave us an opportunity to test those marketplaces. And it was when we started sending out more and more product to the US. That was the point where we said, right, okay, now we need to look at launching via Amazon into the US. Do we need to hold stock in the US? How's that going to work? And we've been lucky that every year we've sold out of products. Up until this point, there's been a seasonality to the products. So the majority of our sales are from September through to about March, when the weather's cold in European countries. So that was our main selling season. And by the time spring came around, we'd always sold out, and we would then manufacture over the summer. With the new products that are coming in, that seasonality is evening out a little bit, and the further afield we reach, the more that seasonality evens out. So knowing that we could launch into the US we knew we'd have to raise that inventory level. So we'd need to hold more stock. We'd need to rapidly increase the amount of product we're manufacturing. So that was the point where I thought, right, the model we're using so far, produce as much revenue as we can, put that back into increasing the stock for the following year, wasn't going to quite be enough. We really would need to look at increasing the manufacturing substantially to be able to cope with US sales. So we'd sort of looked at stock financing at that point. We had looked at funding options, compared debt options. And probably one of the reasons that I really looked for investors at that stage over looking towards more debt options was because of the support that came with it. Okay. And again, it's a reason that we're looking for investment now over just taking on debt. Yes, it means that we have to let go of equity within the company, but actually the company is stronger for more diverse thinking. So if I'm running the business alone, I mean, being a sole founder is a fairly lonely thing to do anyway. It's hard work, and it's great when you can look to other people within your team for support and to bounce around ideas. And I'm very open to other people's way of thinking. So when I'm talking to customers and they give me ideas, it's really great to have other people's input. And that was when I was starting to think, well, actually, if we had an investment team that would bring in new energy and new ideas, give me support as a founder, give me an opportunity to have people to bounce ideas off, because you lay awake at night and you come up with all these crazy things, but until you actually air them to other people and they say, oh, that's a load of rubbish, or just to have that opportunity to talk through things, that's made a huge amount of difference. So having those people within my team, and I'm very lucky, I have a phenomenal investment team so far. There's so many different experiences being brought in from different industries that it's created a better team for the business. And that's even more important probably than the funding itself. Okay. To grow that team and to have the knowledge within the team. Excellent.
So, what kind of funders did you go to in the end? Is that a venture capital company or what?
For the moment, they are angel investors.
Okay, right. Yeah.
So we have 7 investors in the team at the moment, and they're all business owners that have had different experiences. Within different industries, some in retail, some in business to business. So they all bring something a little bit different. And they may not have had retail or manufacturing experience, but just to have those different personalities within the team. They're people that I've spent quite a long time getting to know before they've come into the team, so that we really work together, and there's a great connection within the investment team.
Did they come as a pack of 7, or did you go to them individually then?
All individually, and they've all gotten to know each other quite well. We have regular meetings, and it's brilliant to have that connection within the team now.
Great. So and I'm sure there's lots of people listening and thinking about, how do I find an angel investor? It sounds wonderful. How did you go about finding an angel investor?
So I think when I started to look, the same thing was said to me. Everybody says your investors are probably already in your network. Right. And I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm screwed then. It's not going to work for me because I definitely don't know anyone with the kind of money I'm looking for. So this is going to be impossible. And actually, the more and more you talk to people within your network, all of a sudden things pop up and you get introduced to people, or they have interest in your business. And generally, the 7 I've got now all came from my network, either people that I already knew, people that I'd connected with through business already, people that I'd worked with before, or friends of friends. And that was the best way for me, because I had an opportunity to get to know these people and really feel like they could bring some genuine value to the company.
Great. And how did you go about deciding what the company was worth and how much of it you were prepared to give away for the you're looking for?
That's the challenging bit. That's where a really, really good accountant comes in. And my accountant's been with us for a long time, and looking at valuation is incredibly difficult because it's not just a calculation based on revenue. For us, it was about the loyalty, the customer base that we'd built up, the data that we had held, the social media platform, and the followers that we had. A brand is worth something, and the IP is worth something. So all of those things are really difficult to calculate. There has been a huge amount of work done in terms of forecasting to really look at what the company is capable of doing in time and where we think we want to be over 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and looking at the potential and then working back from there. So it is very, very difficult. And when I first started out, I really did not have a clue. So definitely a really good accountant.
Excellent. And advice that you would give to people thinking about maybe looking for an angel investor?
Probably at the beginning of the journey to finding investment, I knew it's what I needed to do. And I just started talking to people. And I think probably the thing that I learned as I went along is the deck, the information, the package that you're giving to investors is incredibly important. And I thought having a little bit of information about the company and I could just sort of sit in front of somebody and say, well, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And I think, roughly it could do this. That's not enough. And spending a large amount of time in putting together a really good presentation with enough information about what is the problem that you're looking to solve, how are you going to solve it, what does that future market look like, what is your competition, what do your numbers look like, and I again thought it was, well, here's my revenue and this is what I think I'm going to do in a couple of years' time. Not enough. I really had to dive into where is my marketing? How much am I investing in marketing now? What return on ad spend am I getting? What am I going to have to invest in marketing in the future to produce the kind of revenue I'm looking at? And the forecasts we have now are so detailed that it almost seems like overkill. But actually, that was an important process for me to really pull into the business and the numbers and understand what the company's doing now to be able to make sure that works moving forward and that we are continuously hitting those forecast figures.
And was that with your accountant, or did you have to bring somebody else in to do that?
No, I was very lucky actually. My accountant worked very, very closely with me on that. And I would say that process took at least 6 months to make sure that our debt and our forecasts were really good and that I was approaching investors in the right way. So to start with, if I go back maybe a year when I initially started thinking, right, well, we're going to raise further investment, we're going to launch these new products. I'd already designed the products. They were designed and tested and ready for market. And I was going out to investors with please, can you help? This is what we're thinking of doing. And I think it was very much the wrong mindset. I think, we've got something that's very solid, and actually it's just as important that a founder finds the right investors that fit within the business as it is for the investors to find the right opportunity for them. It is a two-way street. That it has to be a good match. And I think it's important for founders to remember that they're interviewing the investors as much as the investors are interviewing them, because it is a connection that has to work in both directions. And when you're offering up equity of a business that you've poured your heart and soul into and that is going to work, and you've taken the time to test that business model and to do your numbers and make sure that it is a solid proposition, then you have something really worth pitching in the right way and pitching with the investors in mind. So I think, initially, again, I was pitching the company and what the company could do and the product line. But actually what I'm pitching now is a solution for my investors. They have the money that they want to invest, and what my company solves their problem. What is their problem? How are they looking to produce revenue? What are they looking for? And how can I help them do that? How can we come together and form a partnership so that I solve their problems and they solve mine? So I think changing that mindset and really understanding how that pitch process went was a long process for me. And actually taking part in Dragon's Den was a really important step towards that, because that due diligence gave me an opportunity to pull the company apart and make sure that I knew my numbers inside and out. And I think you just cannot underestimate the importance of knowing where every penny goes within the business.
Yeah. So that exercise preparing for Dragon's Den, then in knowing that you were going to be kind of put under the spotlight, if you like, was helpful. Anything else that was really? I know you didn't actually get the investments from Dragon's Den, but what else came out of that you say was great to have gone on it, the experience?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough experience, and most people that know more of us hear me say it was a tough and a really unpleasant experience. Not something I would ever want to do again, but actually was such an important part of the journey so far for me personally, my personal development in doing that, because it was so far out of my comfort zone. I love talking about the business one-to-one. I'm not good with public speaking, and I'm definitely not good with being in front of a camera, especially that many cameras in that type of situation. So I was dead against doing Dragon's Den. The amount of people that said to me, "Oh, you should go on Dragon's Den," I kept saying, "You've got to be kidding." Yeah. That's my idea of hell. So this was really pushing myself personally outside of my comfort zone to really do something positive for the business. I knew that I was holding back in doing it for personal reasons, and that was holding back the business. So I needed to push through this. And so going through the whole process, learning the business inside and out, looking at where the failures were, looking at what mistakes we've made, how we were going to correct those going forward, making sure that I understood the business inside and out was a really important process that I may not have gone through if it wasn't for doing Dragon's Den, because it's very difficult to find the time when you are running the business and you are inside the business on a day-to-day basis. You are constantly firefighting. Yep. And to actually stop and say, right, I need to take time out to look back and then look forward, really understand the business and pull it all apart. That's something we often put off because we don't have the time, and it's really important to find that time and make sure you go through that process. So to then come out the other side of that, feeling like I knew the business inside and out, and actually no matter what questions they threw at me, I was going to have the answer. And no matter what they believed was the right decision for them to invest or not to invest, I knew that having gone through that process, I had something solid that was going to be a great opportunity for the right investor. And when that program aired, the public were amazing. The response was phenomenal. I had so many amazing messages of support. It really helped raise the brand profile, particularly in the UK. So our sales grew from that point on. I actually agreed my first investment deal the day after filming the show. Right. We went on to get the further 6 investors after that. So to be one of the companies that went on, the Dragons said no. I came out, I picked myself back up again. I continued looking for the right investors. We found the right investors that I'm really, really comfortable working with. And the business continued to grow, and the public really got behind us. So it was a tough experience that I wouldn't change for the world. Yeah,
very good. And from a strategic perspective, then lots of things that's helped you on with your strategic thinking. And you were talking about putting time aside as well to do that thinking. Mm-hmm. How do you do that now? How do you? You're obviously planning all the time, but what's your internal process or structure like for doing your strategic planning and think about where do we go next and all of these good things?
Yeah. So actually having the investors in the team is a really important part of that for me. So we have regular meetings. And some of the investors hold less than 0.5% of the company, and they are always invited to join those meetings because I love having that slot to be able to tell them everything that's happened in the month previous, everything that's happened going forward. It holds me accountable, but it also gives me that opportunity for review so that I make sure that I take the time out prior to that meeting to go over all of my figures and to then look at what the plan is moving forward. Because actually, when you are a single founder and you're just ploughing ahead, you know in your own mind where you're going, or sometimes you think you do, but actually you haven't gone through that process of actually talking it through. And when you have to explain your choices to another person, you articulate them different. And I think it really helps clear that planning process. It helps with the strategic decisions. And then when I actually put them out loud to somebody else, sometimes I stop myself and go, oh, hang on a minute, that's not going to work, or that doesn't seem right, or I think there's a better way of doing it. Or one of those 7 might say, well, hang on a minute, Kate, haven't you thought about doing it like this instead? And that one little input might make a huge difference. So having that monthly sounding board is vital now to me, to be able to spin off ideas and to do that review process. So I make sure that we continue to do that.
Excellent. No, very good. And it's, in fact, it's one of the key bits of advice we give to all the people that we work with, is about finding yourself or putting together a peer group. We run things we call smart boards, exactly that, six people in them essentially, because of that sounding board. And as you say, a lot of it is when you have to think about it and articulate it yourself. Helps you thinking. Do you do anything on so that's monthly? Do you have an annual planning and backed up by maybe quarterly planning? Do you do anything on those sort of frequencies?
Yeah, so we do a quarterly figures review. So we go through the quarter's figures. That's a slightly longer meeting. We tend to block out time for reviewing numbers, looking at the sales channels that we use, working out which ones are working, which ones aren't, how we're going to improve moving forward, looking at our expenses and our costs and our overheads, and then also looking at the products. What feedback have we received from customers? What's been good? What hasn't? What can we improve on? And looking at the product development moving forward. So what ideas I might have had that we start bouncing around so that I can then start working on that continuous product development.
Brilliant. And in your annual plan, I'm curious, because you obviously, as you said, you're coming to the next stage. You're looking for crowdfunding to support that next wave of launches of the different products that you've got coming. Presumably, at some point, you sat down and had a brainstorm or came up with this approach. Is that through your annual planning, 3-year planning? What led to that, or was it just iterative? Did it just?
So I think probably actually lockdown had a huge impact on the product development. So having that time where we slowed down a little bit, the company sales were still great through lockdown for us because people were outside walking more, so the product was selling, and obviously being an e-commerce business, that was really helpful. But it gave me the opportunity to sort of slow down a little bit on a day-to-day basis and then look at where I wanted the company to go. And the key moment for me was probably having a day where I thought, right, I've got boxes and boxes of clothes in the garage that I need to sort through. They're shoved out there. I've never looked at them. I can sort through some of this stuff. I'm pulling out clothes from a size 8 to a size 18. I think I've been every size and shape conceivable, whether that's pregnancy or weight gain or loss or whatever. And I started thinking, this is ridiculous. Why have I got so many clothes? If it's a shame that clothes don't grow and adapt with you. And it was that sort of started off the thinking of how is it that we waste so much fabric and waste so many clothes, keep buying things every time our body shapes change, when there should be a way for clothes to be adaptable so that if you do grow, can they grow with you? Or if you lose a bit of weight or gain a bit of weight, or if you're pregnant, how can we make clothes still fit us so that we don't have to keep putting them away in storage? And that really started the thinking process for me of how could I produce a range of clothes that did exactly that. And it was through lockdown that I was then communicating more with customers through our social media platforms because people were at home and had a bit more time. So I was getting feedback from customers, starting to work on this concept, starting to draw out things. And over a fairly long period of time, I constructed a range that offered customers a sort of capsule wardrobe so that you didn't have to have a million different items in the wardrobe. They would invest in pieces that were really well made with sustainable fabrics that would stay in their wardrobe for a lifetime and would grow with them or be adjustable in some way for pregnancy. And at that point, when I thought, well, actually, you know, we've gotten this far, we've produced a company of this scale with one product, I've now got a full range. How are we going to then take that to market? What do those figures look like? And having had the experience so far with that one product, I was then able to forecast a little bit of what kind of cash flow we were going to need. How many of these products was I potentially going to sell, and on which of the sales channels were we going to utilize for that? And started putting together a much more detailed future plan for the business. And then I knew roughly how much cash I was going to need to be able to do that. And we then started reaching out to my own network again, and we found the angel investors that were going to be our lead investors. I also got support from a VC, which was amazing actually, because at the time, I think the statistic was about 2% or less than 2% of VC money, of funding money in the UK goes to female founders. So to have actually been able to secure a VC was amazing. I was really, really pleased with that. And then it was right, well, how do we then take the amount from the lead investors, the amount from the VC, and take that then to the goal that I'm looking for? And for me, crowdfunding seemed like the most obvious solution, partly because I'm always putting things on my own social media as well. And you know, lots of my customers, lots of my friends are always sort of saying, oh, it's amazing. It's really great to see the company doing really well and know how hard you've worked. And actually to be able to give friends and family the opportunity to put in much smaller amounts and feel that they're really part of something. Yeah. And for the customers to be able to buy small shareholdings to feel that they're really part of something. And then from a marketing perspective, to be able to have all of those small shareholders to be able to get behind the brand and really help us make a difference and do the things that we really want to do. That felt right to me. So that's where we are now. We've just gone over 50% of our target. So we launch on the platform publicly tomorrow, with about 2 weeks to be able to get to goal. So it is really exciting now, and hopefully we'll be able to get there and launch the new range and really sort of start seeing a shift in the type of clothing that we buy and trying to just see some reduction in that fast fashion impact.
Brilliant. And we're coming towards the end of the hour, I think, on here. So if we were meeting here and having conversation in 5 years' time, what would you count as success now then?
Wow. I think success to me looks like a bigger team of people that are really enjoying what they're doing, a range of products that we've successfully brought to market that has changed the way people buy fashion. So when people, change their body shape, they will invest in clothing that will keep in their wardrobe for a lifetime, so that they're not buying clothes constantly and getting rid of them. And I think that is a really important step towards that reduction in fast fashion. There is so much in the media about how we reduce fast fashion, but changing in body shape is a huge part of that. And if we can produce clothing that counteracts that need to buy clothing because we've grown or we're pregnant or whatever, I think that's going to make a difference. So that to me is what success looks like: a solid brand that is well known for having impacted the negative effects of fast fashion and offered something different, a solution that really makes a difference. Brilliant.
Good stuff. And you're up for one or two really quick questions?
Of course, yeah.
So if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, do you know what? Probably nothing. I would not tell my younger self a thing, because there has been so many mistakes, but one of them has been a really, really important part of the journey. And I think if you have the answers when you first start out, where's the fun in that?
Yeah.
Probably thing I would say is just keep focusing on the goal and keep going. I think that resilience is just so important for a business owner, for any business owner, the resilience to just keep picking yourself back up and keep going, because there will be failures, but you've just got to keep pushing through, because that's a natural part of it all.
Brilliant. Any books or podcasts you recommend that made a difference to you?
One of my favourite books, and I'll be careful how I say it, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a. I really enjoyed that book, because I think we all get so consumed with anxiety and the details, and that to me was a really good read in learning the lessons of how to manage life and how to manage the stresses better. Brilliant.
Love it. What's your most successful marketing tactic? I mean, how do you find most of your customers? What's the thing that works for you?
For us, probably word of mouth, being a trustworthy. So our brand position is probably a key part of our marketing, because I think if we do it right, parents are great at sharing products that have made a difference in their parenting experience. If we are providing them with clever products that really help, they will tell other parents. So making sure that our customer service is top notch all of the time, and making sure that we're sharing that across social media all of the time. Honest and trustworthy branding.
Brilliant. Kate, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. If people would like to get hold of you, find out more about the company, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can take a look at zippersin.co.uk to view the new product range, and would definitely be worth a look at Crowdcube /zippersin.
Brilliant. Excellent. Kate, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.